everyone. Welcome to a regular session of the Yuma County Board of Supervisors. We'll be sitting as all special taxing districts. This is December 19, 2022, 9 a.m. meeting. Now, board members will attend either in person, by telephone, or remotely via electronic conferencing. I see everybody's here, so this is the call to order. And the next item in the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by our Vice Chair, Supervisor Lyons.
Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is call to the public. Call to the public is held for the public benefit to allow individuals to address issues within the board's jurisdiction. Board members may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to Arizona Revised Statute, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to criticism, or scheduling the matter for further discussion and a decision at a future date. Public comments may be made in person or submitted by email at publiccomment@yumacountyaz.gov. The email forms of public comment will be accepted until 8 a.m. the morning of the meeting, and all public comments will be read out loud during the Yuma County Board of Supervisors meeting that starts at 9 a.m. Desiree, do we have any emails? All right, then we'll move on to presentations, proclamations, and appointments. During this segment of the agenda, board members may discuss the presentations and proclamations and may announce appointments to the Yuma County Planning and Zoning Commission and the Yuma County Board of Adjustment, where no legal action will be taken. Does anybody want to make any appointments or need to make any appointments? If not, we'll move on to the consent calendar. There will be no county line this time, so we'll move on to the consent calendar. The following items are listed under the consent agenda will be considered as a group and acted upon by one motion with no separate discussion unless a board member so requests. In that event, the item will be removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion and action. Do I hear a motion to either approve all of them
Motion
or
to approve 1 through 18.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve all items in the consent calendar from 1 through 18. There being no question about any of them, I'll ask for a motion of approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. It surprised me nobody wanted to pull any items out. All right, I think they're trying to beat the land record here.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm not sure that you asked the public that's present.
Oh, yeah, that's right. See, that's what I mean when I said everybody's trying to beat the land record. There are some items in the agenda that are public. I always leave the call to the public open, so this is a perfect example why. We do have a couple of cards to speak. One is on an agenda item, which is 22-17, but and the other one is from Gail Castricone. Gail?
Good job with the name.
It's almost as close as McHuggy.
Good morning. My name is Gail Castricone, and I am the advocate for the A, B, and C Colonia. These are very difficult times and uncertain times that we are living in today. There's so much hopelessness and depression, suicides, and in our neighborhood, especially because of the low-income housing, the gangs and the shootings. You're so familiar with our area, but those are places that's a place where we want to bring hope for now and for the new year. And so the little goodie bag I gave you with this is one of the papers that Supervisor Pancrazzi and I will be putting in our gift bags as we go out this week. And it says, we want to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year that will bring hope and joy to you and your family. Jesus is the reason we celebrate Christmas. He alone is our Savior and hope for eternal life. He is kind and He is loving. He is joy. He is peace. He is faithful. He is good and He is gentle. We will be praying for you and your families throughout the year. Our steering committee met with Pastor and the deacons on December 15th at the Valley Baptist Church, and they have been kind enough to facilitate us for our community meetings that we have once a month on Tuesday at 6:30. we are excited about that because they have said that they would like to look inward. They've to the B&C Colonia. They're really not, they live in the Colonia, or their facility is in the Colonia, but they've never really went that direction with thinking about helping people in that area. So we're very excited about that. One of the deacons is Mr. Raleigh, who owns the Linda Vista RV Park on 5th Street, and he will be attending our neighborhood meeting. And we are hoping that he's going to help us with mobile home parks. He has always been a very good citizen. He's always taken care of his place. It's very, very nice. But all the other places that are out of compliance are even hurting his park, because people across the street have slum and blight, and it's still not being cleaned up. So when people come into his park, they can't use some of their lots because of what people are going to be next to. So we're excited about that. And our committee, Secretary Nancy Powell and I, were accepted as participants for the 2023 Neighborhood Leadership Academy at the City of Yuma. It will be starting January 12th and continue for 13 weeks. This class will be great in helping us advocate for the B&C Colonia. We are hoping that through this, because it's about neighborhoods, even though it's not county and it's city, but they still, in their program, I think it'll be a wealth of knowledge for us to put into the Colonia. At our next neighborhood meeting that we're going to have in January, we're going to get input where we have more people, more owners of properties that are starting to come to our meetings. And so we'll be brainstorming about the most important things that we have to do that we're going to try to accomplish in 2023. So you have a very blessed Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you for your time.
Question, Gail, what date is in January meeting?
Let's see, it's the first Tuesday. So,
To make sure.
yes, okay. And thank you, because I know she's very faithful to come.
I know, I just want people to know, yes.
Anybody else on the call to the public? And remember, I'll leave it open in case someone shows up a little later or you have an ultimate reason to address the board. So I will then move back and continue and move on to the discussion and action items, where we will open each of the following items separately for discussion and action as appropriate. The first one is to elect the Yuma County Board of Supervisors Chairman for calendar year 2023. I'm going to turn this over to Ian so that he can conduct the election himself.
Thank
So,
you,
Ian,
Mr. Chairman.
the floor is yours.
So we'll begin by opening it up for nominations for chairman of the Yuma County Board of Supervisors for calendar year 2023. And there is no second required on nominations. So are there any nominations for a chairman of the board for next year?
I'd like to nominate Martine Porches as chairman.
I'd like to second that. Well, I'd like to second that. I think
Yeah, we
it's-
don't need a second, but
I know, but it's just sort of, I know. Just
very good.
Yeah,
And Mr.
Third is.
So I was so.
It
So you
scares
heard,
me though,
yeah.
because if he gets.
Hey, if I second
got
it, nobody
three.
will nominate me.
Supervisor Porges, do you consent to the nomination?
Let me think about now.
That way he won't be able to blame anyone else. Tough position to be in.
Are there any further nominations?
I move to close nominations.
I'll second that. That needs to be second. I second, just motion second. Forget the third.
All those in favor of closing the nomination, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I will now call for a nomination. All those in favor of electing Supervisor Porges as chairman of the Yuma County Board of Supervisors for calendar year 2023, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Supervisor Porges.
Okay, Supervisor, let's switch seats and see how fast you can conduct this one. No, no,
You
no,
don't wanna finish it?
no.
Wait a minute, I didn't know I was gonna get Tony next to me.
You
You gotta
gotta
finish the year.
Hey, wait a minute. Nobody told me that.
This is till the 23.
Oh,
Starting
well,
on the
damn it. I wanted to
23.
switch right now.
Mr. Chairman, you gotta finish the year.
I didn't know I was gonna get him next to me now.
No, he's gonna move. We're gonna move you over to the other end.
Oh, no,
All right, so
I'm just getting
the
another,
second
I'm
portion
getting a
of
little
this.
piece right here so I have something to lean on.
Okay, well, the next item in the agenda is the selection of the vice chair. So
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll now open it up for nominations for vice chairman of the Yuma County Board of Supervisors for calendar year 2023.
I nominate Jonathan Lyons for vice chair for 2023.
Supervisor Lyons, do you consent to that nomination?
Yes.
Are there any further nominations?
I don't think he needs to consent. We're gonna hardly move or whatever. Move to close nominations.
I move to
No,
close
second.
nominations. Okay.
Do we have a second to close nominations?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of closing the nominations, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I will now call for a vote on the nomination. All those in favor of electing Supervisor Lyons as Vice Chairman of the Yuma County Board of Supervisors for calendar year 2023, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations.
Right. Okay, I guess the long speech with the tears and stuff is for the end too? All right, let's move on. Is there anything going on between the attorney and the county administrator?
We determined that the long speeches will happen at the first meeting of the year.
Okay, well then move on to the County Administration Public Health Service District in discussion and possible action regarding updates on contagious diseases, infectious disease issues and activities to include a discussion of events and activities occurring at the international border that involve affect county health and emergency management. Coming up? Yeah, I guess.
Maria.
Good morning. Maria Nunez, Deputy Director for the Health District. Just here to give an update in regards to what's going on in that community. We continue to see flu-like symptom illnesses in the county. Compared to last year, influenza, up to date, we have 962 cases. Last year, we had 3 cases. As of last week we had 70 cases, but that was a decrease from 145. RSV, currently 228 cases compared to 20 cases last year. As far as COVID, we're high transmission rate. We're high transmission, high communicability. Our average right now is 50 cases a week, compared to last month of 25 cases. One of the testing right now, they have a rapid testing that can be done at providers which test for RSV, flu, and COVID. So they're able to determine what kind of really fast to find out what they have. The symptoms for flu, RSV, and COVID are pretty similar, so it's hard to tell what you have unless you get tested. For right now, the recommendation for mild symptoms is to stay home, rest, and get tested to see if you have COVID. The recommendations for COVID right now is for you 5 days quarantine, stay home for 5 days, wear a mask for 5 days after that. If you have moderate symptoms, call your provider first before going to the hospital to decrease the surge at the hospital. There are clinics available throughout the community that can test and provide treatment. For severe symptoms, if you have difficulty breathing, you're dehydrated, you're not able to manage the symptoms at home, then you can then we recommend for the hospital. Pretty much the recommendations is, like I said, stay home, get tested, call your provider, good hygiene, disinfect, and especially wear masks around in public areas to, especially if you're going to be around high risk people that can get really sick. That's pretty much what's going on. I mean, people are getting sick, so.
So I guess it gives us just one more opportunity to remind people we're not totally out of the woods with neither flu. Obviously, flu started off early this year, and it's been really
It has peaked very early. I mean, it started in October, and we're at peak. I mean,
but we hope we're at peak.
we're just at the peak right now.
Well, okay, well, hope it's just a peak, and we're gonna get close with family, I hope, down in December and January. So please just be cognizant of the fact that you could easily get infected if you're in a public setting where there's a lot of there's a lot of crowd, a big crowd. You just make sure you protect yourself, you protect others. It's really tough to tell people to wear a mask right now because it's so difficult. We're so tired of wearing a mask that we just think so. But let's remember that part of the reason we're talking about this is because we're now in a high level of infection for both. Well, flu is just it's just out of the charts, but COVID is also coming back up.
And last year, mostly everybody got tested for COVID, but we weren't testing for RSV and flu like we are right now. So that does play a factor in how much we're seeing the numbers.
So right now, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
and we're testing for all three now, right?
So there is a rapid test. You know how you do COVID testing, rapid test? The clinics are able to do that all at once.
Oh, for all three.
For all three. So they're reporting those to the health department, and of course the hospital can run the test and all three tests too. But we're getting numbers from all the clinics, and RSV. The highest percentage of RSV is under the age of 5.
So it's primarily a pediatrician type situation.
Sorry?
It's basically affects kids more than any
Yes.
children.
It can be. It can be transmitted to adults too, but we're seeing it more in.
How's the hospital doing again? Is it
So as far as I know, there's a search. I mean, they're
close to peak?
trying to get staff and.
Well, it's going to be a tough winter. It's kind of looks like that. Any questions?
I have a question. Is there a reason why they're out of pediatric Motrin and pediatric and children's Motrin? Is it just because RSV is so high?
I think
and that
people
they
are
haven't-
stockpiling. I think because you're you have everybody's out getting their Advil, their decongestant, and trying to manage symptoms at home, and
Yeah.
that's there's a peak, and everybody's getting sick, so they're out there trying to get their medication.
I read it. I saw it on the news this morning. I went, whoa.
And you could see it on the aisles when you go to places like Walmart. You see all the empty spaces, and as people just it's like gasoline. People stockpile. It's a tough place to be, but I don't know. I guess it could be worse. I find very little solace in that, but it could be worse.
And with COVID right now, where most people have had their vaccine and they've had COVID, so the symptoms are not they're mild where you can manage them. And of course, another recommendation that I failed to mention is get your COVID booster and get your flu vaccine is still available. We have noticed that a lot of people have not the booster has not been the uptake has not been as we expected.
What are the CDC instructions for people who contract COVID and it's not that serious, but you don't want the rest of the employees in the company to?
So 5 days. It's just 5 days of staying home, and then 5 days of wearing a mask. So you can go to work after the 6th day as long as you wear a mask.
And then go to work after the 5th day, the 6th day.
And then people that are exposed to COVID, like for instance, if you have a family member that has it, they don't have to be quarantined as long as they're watching for symptoms and get tested and wear their mask.
Now, symptoms are somewhat obvious for those people who have symptoms, but the problem with COVID now is that you can have COVID and not know it.
Right.
And
Some
you can
people
pass it
just
on
have
to
like
people.
runny nose, and they look like they feel like flu-like symptoms, cold
Flu.
symptoms. We still have the test at the libraries that people can, and go get tested and get a kit. And like I said, there's providers. There's quite a bit of providers that actually can test and provide that service for the community.
What about the tests the government used to send, the 3 or 4 tests a month? Are these still available?
You can get them at the library.
But you can get them at the library. Yeah.
Like a public announcement, that would probably be in order. I think a lot of us have forgotten just how to go about doing that. Maybe, you know, next time or something, just provide us a website where that anyone can order their kids. I mean, I think that part of this is going to be more preventive than anything else. And I think when people go through a New Year's party or something, 2 or 3 days later, running a test would always be, I think advisable. And that way you'd know you sort of went past. Yeah, before you get infect all your house and
Yeah,
somebody else.
before you do infect your whole family, yeah.
Anyway, it's the times we live on. Any other questions, comments? And thank you again, the health department, for keeping an eye on all these things. I know that sometimes, we end up just, our purpose is obviously not to scare people. Our purpose is just to remind people that, they should take care of themselves. It's not, we're not out of the woods yet, and it's still a matter of importance that you realize that sometimes you may not be as impacted as someone else. And you have to remember, anyone above 65 is in a difficult situation if they get COVID. It's different it's between kids. We've got this opposite spectrum nowadays applying, it's RSV or whatever that respiratory disease is, applies to mostly children. And COVID is really serious in mostly older people.
And it's hard to determine what you have, so we don't want people to self-diagnose, but, stay home if you're sick. That's
All right. Okay, well, thank you very much. I think I don't think we're getting a report. Tony Badia still on vacation or? Oh, okay, well,
Thank you.
thank you.
Russell.
Russell's here.
Russell's here.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Russ Hartley, Human County Officer of Emergency Management. I currently have no updates unless there's questions from the board.
I do have a comment.
Yes, sir.
And I called Ian about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 days ago, within last week. And there was an issue out there for portable toilets, and I wanted to commend for how fast you guys handle that. I'm talking about portable toilets at the border.
Yes, sir. We, I think it was Thursday morning, we received a call from one of the NGOs that's been working with Border Patrol and the migrants. And there was a contract issue and the portables were removed down in the San Luis area. So within 5 hours, we were able to get 5 of them out there for the migrants that were waiting.
Say that I was pleasantly surprised at the speed in which you handled that. That is a very difficult situation that the government thinks too much sometimes. And, I was just pleasantly surprised you guys handled that pretty quickly. I mean, those are the type of situations that can get serious very quick.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I didn't mean it that way, but, thank you, Russ. I don't think so. I think you guys have a pulse on what's going on over there. You do as much as you can within the confines of what you can do, but we're all keeping a close eye on that situation out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
That does get serious pretty quickly. All right, so that takes care of that, and we move on now to clerk of the board. It's an action to appoint members of the Board of Supervisors to the Yuma Metropolitan Organization Executive Board for calendar year 2023, which had a different one here, but it says appoint members and to boards and commissions. I did not see that especially outside, but I guess we can do it. Which one do you have? Which agenda? Because
Same two, right?
same?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there are 2 separate items, the first being appointments to YMPO.
Okay, so that's got to be done separately. It's got to be done by the Board of Supervisors. And the board members have all responded that they would like to continue in their current positions.
Yes.
So why don't we just simply, as a board, make a motion and second to appoint the members
I'll
that
make a
are,
motion for 4
to
and 5
reappoint? 4 and 5?
to reappoint as presently constituted.
Some of them are appointments by the board, and some of them are
Yeah,
appointments by
correct.
the
Number 5
chairman.
is the chairman.
Number 5 is the chairman.
Oh,
So you need,
okay.
number 4 should
Number
be,
4.
I'll second that.
right? There's been a motion and second to reappoint the members that we already have serving in the Yuma Metropolitan Organization. All those in favor of the motion, oh, wait a minute. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. I'll move on to item number 5, which is the clerk of the board. The chairman will appoint members to serve on the following boards and commission for calendar year 2023. It would be the Chamber of Commerce Legislative Affairs Committee, the Chamber of Commerce Transportation Committee, County Supervisor Association Legislative Policy Committee, Elections Advisory Committee, Greater Yuma Economic Development Corporation, Local Emergency Planning Committee, Local Workforce Development Board, Liaison, Western Arizona Council of Governments Executive Board, Yuma Resource Water Management Group, and the Yuma Crossing National Heritage Area Corporation. Now, everybody that I've found out just wants to continue serving on the boards they currently serve. So I'm going to just simply appoint them as a part of the procedure. So they're hereby appointed to those boards for the calendar year 2023. All right, that formally takes care of that. I think we go to item number 6. As a board of directors of Yuma County Improvement District number 2017-02, Tacna Water, will hold a public hearing today at 9 a.m. to hear and pass upon the assessment and proceedings previously held, and to hear and pass upon any written objection, if any, filed with the clerk. Approve the assessment for the district, adopt resolution number 2022-35, authorizing the chairman to execute resolution 2022-35 in the form approved by bond council, and establish a debt service number for the district. Now, the first item in the agenda is to open it up for a public hearing. Well, before we do that, we'll let.
Good morning, Chairman Reyes, members of the board. Of course, the purpose of the hearing is to provide any property owner in that area an opportunity to voice their concerns or objections regarding the assessment letters or their assessments. They received their assessment letters, demands for cash payment in November, and they've had a month to be able to pay it, and that payment period ended on the 14th. I will say that last week on the 13th, Supervisor Simmons was gracious enough to set up a meeting for us at the Citrus City Clubhouse, and we were able to meet with everyone and answer lots of questions, and Administrator Regehi was there as well. So I think it was a great meeting, but right now it's a formal opportunity for anyone to say they totally object, but they were just wanting to understand what it was about, so.
Right? Let me open it up to the public and see, did we get any, first of all, I guess I'll ask the question afterwards. Is there anyone in the public that wants to talk about or object to what we're doing with the Tacna Water District? Going once, going twice, gone. I'll return it back to the board for their decision, and their decision will be to approve the assessment for the district, to adopt resolution number 2235, and establish a debt service fund for the district. I think those are the actions that we've got to take today. And did we have any written objections or anyone?
We do not.
Right, so
Chairman, so moved.
is there a second?
Second.
You're too quick, I didn't get that. It looks like a
Oh,
chorus.
sorry, Jared, go ahead, I'll withdraw.
No, it's fine. Just a second. There's motion by Supervisor Lyons and seconded by Supervisor Simmons. The future chairman doesn't have a say in it right now, but he will soon. So any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. So we'll move on to number 7, which is Human Resources, discussion and possible action to approve proposed personnel rules and regulations. Chapter 4, 423, which is telework, which is one of those leftovers from the pandemic that I think has become much more of a norm than an exception. So it's, explain it.
Good morning, Chairman Reyes, members of the board, Felicia Foster, Human Resources Director. Yes, prior to the pandemic, it was a part of many counties where they had a telework process in place. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. And then it actually created situations where many counties had to be able to have employees out. And all positions were considered at that time. Now, as we are recovering from the pandemic and we're trying to attract or retain our current employees, it was something of an interest that we had a study that we, as you'll have read with Jesus Cervantes, presented information regarding telework versus remote work. And so we surveyed many of our employees. We inquired about what process that we could put in place. And what you have in front of you is a proposed rule. I know that it may have the appearance that it is seen as a benefit for all, but it is truly a benefit for the department head or the elected official to have employees that are in certain positions that will continue for their place of work outside of their regular working hours here at Yuma County. Many of those positions as might be seen as our exempt in positions, because as an exempt individual, you are bound to work anywhere from 40 hours or more at various different times during the work week or through that day. And so with that information, I know that it might be perceived, and that's why we had a committee that was established with a representative from each department or office to be able to gather information to see how employees would feel. Some employees adverse how this would only be specific to, a certain group of individuals. Why couldn't it be open to everybody? But not all positions could be provided that service, which we found during the pandemic to receive 100% customer service outside of the office hours. So we strive to look at different ways that we would provide an alternative benefit to those individuals. And there is mechanisms that are put in place for that, for employees that are both salaried versus hourly rated employees. What you have in front of you today is a proposal that has gone through the vetting process, that has received comments back from employees, as you'll see, that are noted in your comment sheet there. And it wasn't something that was just presented one time during a 2-week period. We did spend a lot of time to ensure that we gathered everybody's input, and we had our county attorney's office do our verification of the information. And we did also inquire to see what other counties that are out there that have something of a similar process. And I did note in the summary that information for you. So I'm asking you today to consider approving a telework process for our employees to assist with the department head or the elected official per their designation as to what those positions would look like. The criteria was established there for you in the rule as well. So it would be something that is not just because this position seems to be best suited. There is criteria for that. And it is also at the discretion of the Board of Supervisors to make that determination if they will continue it with the program or to immediately exclude the program from one of the benefit options. Any questions?
Oh, some of the comments, I mean, obviously, not everybody is totally, I think people think that they can do the work from home, but when you're not in sales, when you're actually serving people, it's kind of, some people just don't have the ability to access some of these people at home, and some of them may want just about, the service that someone physically can give. It is somewhat controversial now after, we've gone through the crisis, but I think people just got used to working from home a lot, and their life experiences change, and they decide that maybe they enjoy doing that more than they thought. I'm one of those ones that thinks that, if you have kids, it's almost impossible to dedicate it 100% to whatever you're doing, especially if the kids are out of school and anyway, there are some advantages and obviously some disadvantages that work for working from home. And you try to address most of them in here. I see some of the comments. I think that that's just the way, not of the future, it's the way of the present. Whomever can do that, it may be the only way you can keep them. They may be looking for a different lifestyle that provides for them. Okay, any other comments? If not, then I'll.
Hold on. The amount of time that an employee can be at home working from home, or
And telework from home, Chairman Reyes, Supervisor Porches, that would be determined by the department head or the elected official. For example, it says like you could have an irregular type of telework. So that means I work at one time away from the office once a month or once a week. Or it could be on an occasional basis, but that is really going to be determined by you, the department head, for the need. For example, and I'm going to utilize many times as an attorney, they are asked to be in front of the judge. So if it is in their best interest to be not at the office but at home still performing, if at any time they have to report to the office, they have to be readily available to be able to come in and be able to present. So it's not as if I can just, let me take off to Phoenix and then telework from there and then in hopes that I can still perform my job. There's actually specifications as to what's required that I have to be present, if that's helpful.
I just don't want, if it's up to the department head, let's say an employee that really doesn't work with any of our residents or people that public, I mean, let's say if they're out, they work from home 4 days or 3 days a week, will that create any other issues with other departments?
Right, so when you're looking at 3 or 4 days, then that is no longer considered like telework, that's more remote work, because we have a 5-day work week. So we would want to be able to establish, it's also very similar to when you're looking at intermittent leave versus regular leave. So how would that look like? What is the percentage of time that you're asking that individual to be within the office to truly complete what they need to complete? They're going to be held accountable and responsible for their full level of work as if they were in the workplace. And with that, there needs to be that constant communication, there needs to be the verification, and as well as the employee, is agreeing to, I'm going to perform these duties at the same level that you asked of me to be in the office. So there's more, I would say, more eyes on you being away from the office to ensure that you are meeting the level of responsibility that you're asked to perform.
You know, I've always, I mean, obviously there are some advantages for the private sector to do this. I mean, the call centers, for example, they don't have to rent a place. They just, they set up their workers at their home. But I've seen how they work, and they're continually on the phone, and they're monitored all the time. And it's like you really can't step away from your phone, from where you're connected to, and do something else. You're asked to be there. But I think teleworking has to be a matter of trust. The director needs to trust that employee to perform the job. IT is the prime example of something you can do from someplace else. IT work, I mean, you just connect on the computer, you check in, and you can check and change programs. I think the biggest issue we've got is, as a public service institution, I mean, you can't just ask the sheriff, for example, to just take the call and take every information at the phone. Sometimes you have to send an officer to take a look at what's happened. It's one of those things that I think there's so much leeway on one side, there's so many advantages, but there's also disadvantages. And in a company that sells service, it's probably a little thornier than normal, but that's what you have a policy. Otherwise, you end up with findings in an audit because you don't have anything that guides you through a lot of this stuff. And I think that a lot of what we see when we go through audits is that there is no written process to handle whatever it is that we're handling. So it's although I think it's always government always makes it more complicated than it should be, according to me, but I can understand where we are driven by statute and we're driven by what the written word. So we need to have a written policy for almost anything we do. Otherwise, we end up having too much flexibility, and even if you don't commit a mistake or you don't take advantage of it, the fact that you can is just enough for someone to bring out the fact that we are here to do public service, and public service should be the driver. Any other comments?
No, and you mentioned trust, and I think that's what it's really we're gonna rely on, at least supervisors and administration. But how about, have you talked about any recommendations if any staff member abuses, yeah, or takes advantage of it, or what's it?
Yes, Chairman Reyes, Supervisor Porches, there is an agreement that an employee signs, understanding that they have to comply with our Yuma County personal rules, they have to comply with their departmental policies, and it actually outlines for them if their inability to perform and to follow through with that process, then there is disciplinary action up to including separation of employment depending on the severity of the situation. That also entails their usage of the equipment. So because I am now taking this tablet home, I have to still, I'm held accountable right now for my tablet or my laptop, but I am actually saying that I will have a secured network. I'm going to have all of these level of responsibilities to ensure that our equipment and the information that I'm trying to acquire is going to be kept safe, and that I'm also tracking that information and sharing it with my supervisor if there's any changes to contact IT. So there's like a whole process. If this is approved, then Human Resources will meet with the department head and the elected official, identify what those positions are, include county IT involved in that process, making sure that the equipment is readily available, that there are certain resources that are going to be attached to that equipment to ensure that we have a full knowledge as who has those resources outside of the home, outside the workplace at their home, and also with regards to risk management. So there's a whole group of individuals that are going to be involved in that process. So there is a way to address the misuse.
I guess it's one of those.
That was my concern, is we are so security to make sure that that we don't lose any information, that we don't get it stolen, we don't get ransomware put on it, we don't get all this stuff that can happen, that but you guys have that. I mean, that's taken care, it's being addressed.
Yes, Chairman Reyes, Supervisor Pancrazi, that is correct.
Okay.
I just want to comment. We're more like Big Brother than anything else. We have a trust and verify policy, and in case employees do not know this, your vehicles you take home have a memory card in it. So even if you speed and don't know about it, the system will know about it. So it's getting to a point now where technology can basically determine what you do, what you're doing, when you're doing it, and where you're doing it. So it's just a sign of the times that people would want to get into a situation where they be monitored that way. But I mean, a choice that you make. It's a choice that you make.
Well, just one more comment, question. What injuries? How is that going to be addressed? Are we liable, or is it the home, or they're still working? How is that being?
Liability insurance, yeah.
Chairman Reyes, Supervisor Porches, excellent question. That is something that we have also addressed with Arizona County's insurance pool. And so how they look at injuries is they will truly do an assessment. So here's an example that they provided to us. If I was working at my home and I need to go and get a cup of coffee, and by chance when I was walking to go get the cup of coffee right by my island, I seemed to trip over my dog. What they would do is they would look at it and say, well, would that dog have been in the office? And they would have said, well, no. So then at that point, did I, as the employee, ensure that there were no obstacles in my way to perform my job? So they're going to take that as a case-by-case basis, but all that descriptive use of information is going to be very important and valuable to ASEP. But they said that they would look at a situation case-by-case basis, and that was the scenario that they provided to us, because it's rare that you're going to have someone who is going to trip over various different unusual objects that they would have at home that you wouldn't have in the office. So that's where we have to go through the process with the employee. Your work site has to be, obstacle-free, just like you would be in the workplace. So we were asking for certain information, as well as even asking them to please take a picture of the location where they'll be working at to ensure that everything is in compliance.
It's kind of weird. Yeah, you better not put a printer in the bottom of there, in your way. But it's to me, it brings in a slew of different issues. For example, if you get COVID-19 and you have to stay at home and you can telework, I mean, you're certainly not going to be off. You're going to be asked, okay, keep up, right? And so it's advantages and there's a bit disadvantages of having to actually work at home. I think the employee is going to pretty soon figure it out, and the supervisor needs to understand that it's not all, just advantages. There's a lot of disadvantages of working from home. But again, I think that the purpose of this is to have a policy, something that we can follow, something that we can point to and say, okay, well, these are the rules. This is what we've got to live with. And that's just, I think, a lot of what government, especially at this level, does. Creates a lot of rules and regulations that people need to follow. I just think it's a natural progression of things. There will be questions, there will be difficulties, there will be issues. And I think we need to just open it up and just go through them and see how they work out for the employee, right? Or the company. Anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion to go ahead and approve the proposed personnel rules and regulations regarding telework.
Moved.
There's a second. Those were very reluctant motions in there. Just a second. But there was one first and one second. So any discussion on this? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Somebody should stay home. Who was it? Just kidding. All right, we'll move on to number 8, human resources. Also approve the grade and salary adjustments for the legal secretary classification, legal secretary 1, legal secretary 2, legal secretary 3, lead legal secretary, legal administrative specialist, legal office supervisor, senior legal office supervisor, juvenile, executive assistant, paralegal classification, paralegal and lead paralegal, and C, investigator classification, investigator and lead investigator, effective December 25th, 2022. Go ahead. If
So
you're going to repeat that.
So as you may recall, about a month ago, I was here presenting information to you with regarding the attorney classification and how the recruitment and actually attraction for having possible qualified attorneys come and work for Yuma County. With that being said, we also are experiencing that same situation, because it's like a domino effect, that has had truly a negative situation for our legal classification, secretarial staff. And so as we had the same number of attorneys who had left, we also have the same number of vacancies for the secretarial pool and the county attorney's office. But it just does not affect the county attorney's office. It also affects the legal defender and the public defender. I know previously, maybe not too long ago, in the legal defender's office, they had a vacancy and they were hopeful to acquire some talent. And because of our current rate of pay, it was not suffice. And so that went through a whole process, and we were going to put a delay to be able to bring this information to you during the budget process. But as we start to see that it had a ripple effect with the other offices, it was best that we present this to you at this time. As you'll see here noted, the information, we actually provided legal secretary market study calculation showing you the actual funding and the special revenue and what that looks like, broken down by 280 hours for the full year, and this is for half of the year, 1080, and what that would impact to our fund with regard to the physical impact. If there's specific information regarding the funding source, I know that I have assistance here from Tony Struck, but with that as well, if there's specific questions about the positions themselves, various members from the county attorney's office, legal defender's office, or public defender's office is here as well to answer any of those questions. So with that, that's the information that I present to you today in hopes that you would approve the market classification study for the classifications that you've listed.
I don't have a particular problem with that. I have a particular timing problem with that. You know, this to me, it's just the start of a process. You're going to find out that most positions are going to be tougher to fill just simply because people are, you know, they're shopping around, and inflation and all those other things are pushing people to ask for better salaries and better positions. So although I see this as sort of like, okay, well, this is the first, you know, that we deal with it. We're going to be dealing with it pretty much all next year. I think people are going to be coming in saying we can't hire because they're paying more. I mean, the sheriff goes through this all the time. I mean, he trains people, he gets them in there, and all of a sudden they get a better offer from, you know, Homeland Security or DEA or somebody, and they go for a better job. We're dealing with it pretty much next to it. Detention officers the same way. You're competing with the state, you're competing with other entities. It's tough, and it's always been, as far as I'm concerned, sort of like putting a finger on the dike and holding the water there, because, you know, it's just, when you take it out, I mean, it's going to start flooding. So it's to me, it's like greyhound following a greyhound. A rabbit follows a greyhound. They'll never catch up. But our job here is to take a look at this as individual situations and make decisions based on that. And if we can begin with especially the legal secretaries, we certainly don't want them to piss off at the county attorney or anybody nearby them. We want them to do a good job. So are there any more comments on this, or are we ready to just simply give up? If we're ready to give up, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Yeah, there you go.
Second.
The willingness to second surprised me. That's the motion. But there's been a motion, a second, to approve all these reclassification and salary adjustments for all these paralegal and legal people. Any discussion? Any more discussion? Nobody crying anymore? No, nothing? Okay, well then, all those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, I gave it enough time. The motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Then we move on to the sheriff's office, which is why the sheriff's standing back there, just making sure that if we don't do this, he'll take the security away from us. No, he didn't tell me that. You're going through the same thing. The next item is to approve Yuma County Sheriff's Office Detention Officer market salary adjustment, amend the selected law enforcement step pay plan for detention officer classification. Detention officer, senior detention officer, detention sergeant by approximately 11.56, effective December 25, 2022. Sheriff, I saw that what you gave us is like 3 times the same thing, but in different formats. So in case we didn't get it this way, we got it this way or this way. But the message is the same. You're having a problem retaining officers. You need some market adjustments. You need to have them happen relatively soon, if not immediately. So you're coming up to us and saying, guys, you need some help here, keeping some of these people. They're leaving at a rate of 23 or 22%, which is a little lower than last year, but not enough to feel comfortable. An attrition rate of 23.4 is not a healthy one. You're training too many people all the time. The turnover is too much, too fast. I mean, just as soon as you get people trained and qualified and good people, you're losing them to other places. It's like I said, it's a pain that is felt almost everywhere right now, but in those positions, those are sensitive positions. So you guys, what do you?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve item 9 as presented.
Second.
Yeah, this is getting too quick for me. But there was a motion and a second. You have to decide which one to raise to second that motion. And again, I think we made those points earlier. Sheriff, is there anything you want to say?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, first, hope everybody has a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I want to thank Felicia, HR, for their study that was done. It kind of brought to light a pretty serious situation. And I want to thank the board for addressing that as soon as possible so we can retain our employees. It's kind of a shame that they can go to a local business here and make $1 less and have weekends and holidays off, where much like item, 7, our DOs can't telework, and I don't know if anybody wants to take any inmates home. So it's important we address that, especially with having a DOC, Department of Corrections, state prison here. That's our direct competition, along with our local law enforcement. So thank you for addressing.
Right. Well, I think we all understand the problem, and we're trying to deal with it as soon as we can. Time is never on your side on these issues. The longer it takes, the worse it gets. It's not trending the right way. And the right way would be for us to have some sort of stability that isn't there right now in terms of salaries and benefits. They're just increasing at a rapid pace.
Well, it takes a special, I just want to say it takes a special man and a woman to do the job they're doing.
It's, Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors, you're exactly right. It takes a special person to be able to work in that environment. And our partnership with AWC doing the detention academy out there now has helped us astronomically. Fact is, it's bringing in entities from outside of the county, sending their personnel down here to get trained as well. So we're doing everything that we can.
Are you able to poach?
Well,
Deer. We're talking deer.
contracts, we instituted a contract to help us with that. So not all counties do that. So
Okay.
yeah,
They're not
I
able,
commend you on your contracts.
recruiting.
they're not
on
able
a-
to poach from us, is what it is, yeah.
Stop with the pushing stuff. Let's move on. There's been a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion on this item? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried, Sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, Sheriff.
Good job.
Number 10, County Administration, Construction Management, discussion and possible action to review and approve the guaranteed maximum price proposal for Pilkington Construction in the amount of $1,317,729. Amend the existing construction manager risk master agreement, Exhibit C, for demolition construction work at 185 and 187 South Main Street, and authorize the construction project director to issue notice to proceed to for demolition phase work in preparation for construction of the new county administration building.
Chairman Reyes, members of the board, Dave Hilland, your construction projects director. I do want to, before I begin, introduce from Pilkington Construction, we have Chris Pilkington and Clint Harrington here with us, should you have any questions for them.
Make them come up front so we can actually meet them.
They will go wherever you like.
I think I've seen them before somewhere.
Good morning.
A place or two. We also have,
Have a seat, guys, it's okay.
Ignore the wires in them.
Ignore the trip wires and everything else.
Mr. Kevin Vandermolen with Kitchell CEM is here with us as well this morning. My holiday gift to you this year is a very brief presentation. I'm sure you all appreciate that. I think we have exactly one slide to show you.
Wonderful.
And there it is. We're here this morning presenting the demolition guaranteed maximum price proposal for demolition of the two facilities across the street to make way for the new county administration building. I had mentioned when I was here previously that two things. Number one, that when we present this, we would present it as a part of the overall project budget so you can see just how exactly it fits into that budget. And number two, that I wouldn't be here unless I had a fairly high level of confidence that this is in fact the final set project budget and that it fits within that. As you can see, just a quick skim down the numbers, we're showing a balance to completion for our professional services at $2 million. All the owner-provided services, these are things like our audio-visual system, our security systems, our furniture, fixtures, equipment, and those sorts of things that the county provides directly at about 2.6. And those are budgetary numbers. We're working to finalize them. That's why they're a nice even number at this point in time. For the construction portion itself, we are currently working under the pre-construction phase contract that you approved going back to June of this year. The demolition you see there at the proposed amount of $1.317 million. And then a construction, and the asterisk takes us down to the bottom here where you see that. To date, what we're working off of, we had a schematic design phase estimate that was complete back in June. We analyzed that, and that was really the first point in which we really had some level after. I can't quite say post-pandemic, but after the effects of everything that went on over the last 2 years and their impact on the construction industry, that was the first point where we could say, okay, there's enough stabilization going on to where we feel like we can start to hang our hat on these numbers. Moving forward into the DD, design development phase drawings coming out in October, we did see an increase based on the level of detail that was the variation between DD and SD phase. So working through that, you'll see that we're talking about some design updates and value engineerings to bring that difference back down within scope and maintain this current construction budget that we're working with. As a portion of that budget, we were identifying we're holding out 10% of the labor materials costs as a contingency going forward, and that brings our total project budget at this point in time pretty much right at $49 million. As far as our schedule, we are looking at if you approve this proposal this morning, we would move into the first portion of demolition activity, which involves immobilizing, setting up the site. We did, just as a side note, I guess, we did intentionally schedule the start of that activity to take place after the first of the year so that we aren't closing off sidewalks and roadways during the holidays down here on Main Street to help out the local businesses to the best that we can. Of course, this project will go on for a couple of years, so there will be some of that disturbance going forward. But they will start mobilizing the salvage operation, which is actually two parts to it. The county has already begun some of that salvage operation to date. There's a portion of that that belongs with Pilkington's contract that they will then complete starting in January. The actual takedown of the building coming at the end of February into March and through April of 23. After that, pending the approval of the construction permits, then we're looking at a late spring start to construction, finishing approximately 2 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
With that, I'll ask if there are any questions. Again, if there's anything that either.
This is not going to be nearly as tough as asking to name the building. We got like 52 suggestions in there. This one's kind of simple. That's how it begins. You have to tear that down. Unfortunately, it feels a lot worse than it thought it would feel. Knocking the building down. I'm sure that if Lenore Stool was here with us, she would be arguing, no. But the point is, some of this stuff, it just needs to be done. We invested a lot of money in that building, and I'll be remiss if I didn't say that we thought things would go differently. Definitely don't want to spend a lot of time reminiscing because there's not much to reminisce about. It's just there's a sort of attachment to what you do, what you pay to do, and in government, it should be the first and foremost thing you think about when you spend money. And spending money to tear down what we put money into is a little difficult for me personally, being the one that's been here for a longer time. I suppose the new board members may not have the same attachment to that building. I've always said that doing an old building was not a good thing to get into.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor
we've
Franklin.
taken as much out of there and repurposed it or sold it to recoup as much as we could out of it as we possibly can, right? Have we done that?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways to address that, but yes, the short answer is yes. We are in process of that as well. We have already begun, as an example, when we performed tenant improvement work over here at 102 South Main for recording elections. A fair number of doors, door frames, and other materials, built-in counters and countertops and that sort of thing were already moved and repurposed to that facility for that, as well as to some degree up on 4th Avenue for the treasurer and elections or assessor's office as well. And we'll continue. The county's contractor for salvage has already removed pretty much all remaining doors and door frames and have warehoused them, along with a number of light fixtures and chain link fencing those in the basement, whatever that we can. We still have a number of things that we're looking to remove and hang on to. As an example, at the January 4th board meeting, we'll be here to present a bid award for the Foothills multipurpose complex, and we're looking at a restroom facility out of that building, and we're looking to repurpose some toilet fixtures and partitions and sinks and things like that for that project as well. So there'll be other opportunities to reuse as much as we can.
Good, so so it's not totally going to waste. I mean, it's being
That's not a good statement, but
repurposed. It is being
there's a lot of things
repurposed
that
to
are
the
being
most that
repurposed.
we can.
We want to maximize the value of everything we can out of there.
The elevator. I know everybody's got a question, and I know Ian wanted to discuss it a little bit. But what's happened to the elevator? They're always very expensive to install. They're always very, they're a big item that I don't know if you could ever use again. It's just weird.
If you don't mind, feel free.
Can
You could probably say it more eloquently than I.
I'm Chris Pilkington. I've dealt with the elevator people and talked to them about them. The problem with elevators is once they're in, they're part of the building and they've got great value for the building that's there, but to repurpose them and try to use them, every setup is different. Like this one has doors front and back. They go up certain elevations. Probably the very largest thing that's a problem with these is trying to repurpose them and to be able to get them to meet any of the new codes, because the elevator codes change all the time. And so they just aren't, there's parts and pieces to the elevator that can be salvaged, and we plan on doing that, to have the elevator company come in, take as many parts and pieces out of that elevator so that the parts and pieces can be reused in other buildings, but to be able to actually reuse the whole elevator, it just doesn't work. And there's no building that it could go in the United States. That building can't go anywhere in the United States. Could it go in Mexico or somewhere else? It probably could, but because of the way that the elevator codes work and everything that goes along with that, they can't repurpose.
But the answer is no.
No.
You can go to a
But there are parts and pieces that can be saved to be able to be reused. And when some of your elevators throughout the county go down, and they can reuse it. So there is salvageable parts and pieces to that elevator.
Anybody else has any questions before we move on? I think this is one of those situations. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, oftentimes salvage material is a little bit more costly to reuse.
Yeah, no, especially elevators who are made specifically for a building that are this basically inside a building. They're not outside, it's not like you can put them outside and lift something with it. It's really the situation, the mechanical situation for those are specific to those particular locations. Ian?
Mr. Chairman, just to put a little more context into it, the original estimate for the salvage operation was to have the county net a little more than $500,000. And Also looking at our original investment, having the assessor, recorder, and treasurer over at 197 for the years that they were there, saved an estimated $1.5 million on other building lease. The county, of course, still retains the value of the land there, so our investment in the land remains. And then moving out of this building will create an asset for the county here. So trying to maximize every dollar of that original investment.
Yeah, no, I think that, I said it before and I'll repeat it. I think this board has been extremely conservative in its moves. I mean, we've taken the time, we thought them over, we delayed them as much as possible, but time is never on your side. A project that began as a 10, 12, $15 million project, it goes into 50 million just like that. Once you get into all the details that come into, and most people may not totally understand the difference between a regular building and a public service building. It has different regulations, different requirements that it has to meet. Access requirements, height requirements, there's so many things that go into a public building, especially a public building that's built new in an area that was occupied by an older building. The ground has to be set a certain way. It's got to be compacted. It is a very, very, very difficult, long, lengthy process, and this is just the beginning. So we'll be seeing this again, I'm telling you. All right, do I hear a motion to go ahead and approve the item as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second? I guess you guys do want to get out of here in an hour and a half. There's been a motion and a second to approve the item number, let me check it out, item number 11. No, wait a minute, that's the name of the building. Item number 10, which reads as discussion possible action to approve the guarantee maximum price proposal from Pinkerton Construction in the amount of $1.317729 and amend the manager risk agreement, Exhibit C for demolition phase on the building at 185 and 187 South, and authorize the construction project director to issue a notice to proceed. So that's the motion. It was made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Go forth and multiply, or the other way, go forth and destroy. All right, thanks. We'll move on to the easy one, the naming of the discussion possible action to select the name for the new county administrative building. This one I like to, there's 4 that are left that are really, to me, unless we name it a name like the Eleanor Stewart building or something, we're going to end up naming a Yuma County Administration building, to me. I mean, it's a simple process if you just want to stick with just a simple name. There are 50 names that were suggested. Some of them are pretty creative. Yucca at 197. Sounds like a bar that I remember. Yeah, Yucca 197. Or
Yucca en la main.
Trust Place. I mean, that's a stretch, right? But Trust Place.
Oasis
I
sounds
want
like a
to
bar.
thank admin though for putting it out to the employees to submit some names.
Some of those names are dear to my heart, but impossible to use. So, I think that the last one, the Yuma County Government Center, Yuma County Government Administration Building, Yuma County Main, Yuma County Central Services Building, I think those are pretty much the more reasonable ones that you expect to name a building that you don't want to put a name to it. It's just naming a location where people can understand what it's about. And so saying that it's a Yuma County Administration Building, I think kind of conveys that the whole administration is there. It may not convey who are there, but it conveys the services area that we intend to. So why don't we just do that? Why don't we just sort of sleep on it and get it, maybe if you have any new suggestions or something, you bring them up.
Well,
and
it's going to go by its initials, so YCGC or YCGAB.
I like central services.
I like, YC Main.
I think it has to have county in it. Otherwise, it'll be confused with Yuma. Because we always have that. It needs to have county services.
It has
in
to have county in
It
there.
has to have the name county.
County.
Yuma County needs to be there just simply because if not, it's going to be confused with Yuma anything. And I'm just tired of that. I've only been here for 24 years, but I'm tired of that.
Chairman Reyes,
Okay,
members
so-
of the board, the one thing I did want to mention, you're already saying it, is exactly right. We, and thank you to Deputy County Administrator Josh Scott. He did send out the email and kind of initiated the conversation with all staff to get their input. And I think we did get some great ideas back. We did just want to mention, these were the top 4 scoring internally, but yeah, by all means, any of the other suggestions or any combination that the board wishes to pursue, absolutely at your discretion to do so.
Well, like I said, I just saw them. I think they're pretty close to the end of what we probably looking for without getting into the controversy or naming it after someone who's alive or something like that. Because it seems to me you can name a sewer plant expansion anything, but you can't name a building after someone without somebody saying, well, why, whatever. So let's not get into that. We'll name it one of those forms. I think that if I heard correctly, to my right, somebody likes the central services building on there. So we'll look into all those four and give you a name. We're basically destroying the site, so I don't think that's really an emergency or something that we need to do right away. Unless you're gonna order the plaque, which will take 2.5 years to, get it done, because Jesus Christ, everything takes 2 years to get anything done in government.
The only thing we're looking to do is before long, anyway, no real timeline, but we do want to get a banner out on the construction fencing to indicate to the patrons on the street what's coming on that site, and as well as start planning for signage on the building as part, and that factors into the budget.
Okay, we'll give you something, next year, early next year, when you're destroying the building, okay?
That sounds.
Mr. Chairman, would you like us to bring it back on January 4th, or
Are you in a
a little
hurry
more,
or what?
little more
I mean,
time?
ask the chairman. The next time. As a future chairman, you need to make a decision. That's just to get a decision making really tough to make, right?
right now.
Yuma County
Right, because
Central
you've been talking to the
Administration
supervisor to your right all the time.
I'm allowed to talk to one supervisor.
That's right. And, let me tell you guys, if you want to do it right now, I have no problem with it.
Yuma County Central Administration.
But it sounds like the CIA, man. I think central, why? Is it central? Is it central to the county? Is it in the middle of the county? Is it, why? Why central?
Services.
Yeah, well, Yuma County Government Center, Yuma County.
Centralized could be all in one location,
Yeah, but it's not.
under one roof.
You have IT in another location, you have the health department in another location, you have all kinds of places in other locations, the public works department's in another location, so.
Okay, I'll retract that. Yuma County Administration Services
Building.
Building.
All right, I got it, that would be fine with me,
Yuma County Administration Services Building.
all right?
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, well, let's take a vote. Look, the administration building would have been fine with me, but I can deal with Yuma County Central
Yeah,
Services
well, you
building.
want to put Yuma County in there so they don't mix it up with the city.
I think that central implies that it's in the center of something, and, or central implies that's where everything is at, and I don't think that's where everything is at, and I don't even think that's central. So Yuma County Government Administration Building.
No, Yuma County Administration Services.
Okay, I don't care. Yuma County Administration Services Building? Now, do the name building have to be in there? I don't think so. I think that we don't need to put building in it,
No.
so,
Yuma County Administration Services.
I agree.
okay, that's it. Let's just settle.
YCAS.
Okay, YCAS.
Oh, sorry, just to clarify.
Yuma County Administration Services.
Building.
YCAS, so.
What is that?
You
Think
just
about
have
it.
to
This
make
is a
sure
place,
it doesn't
right?
make
That
a
is
bad
a
acronym.
description. This is a place. That is a description. What you're talking about is describing what we do there. What building I didn't like at all, but when you put in services, I said you're describing what we do.
Yuma
But
County Administration.
Yuma
Administration?
County Administration Services.
Well, that's what it
And you
is.
seconded it. Take a vote. Let's go.
I think we need to go, no, just kidding.
Okay, vote. Any more discussion?
Yuma County Maine. Just go ahead.
Oh, I like Yuma County, Maine.
197, Yuma County, May 197. I second that motion. Nah, just kidding. It'll be an alternative motion. It'll be an alternative motion here.
Yuma
No,
County on
Yuma
Main,
County
yes.
Administration Services is what you want to call it?
Yep.
Mhm.
Building.
Anybody else
building.
have any?
No building on it. I already made the
YCAS.
argument. Why building? Services seems to me like, it, again, describes something.
Estamos
that you-
servicios. Estamos a sus órdenes.
Bueno, if you add that, we're at your service, in a building. We're in a building at your service. Right, so the name is
Department of-
Yuma County
wait,
Government
DCS?
Administration Services.
Yuma County Administration
Huh?
Services.
Developmental services, what?
No.
No.
No, developmental services, no. That's already a building somewhere.
I I know, but that's what I'm saying. They've got services on theirs.
Yuma County Administrative Service and
Administration
Support.
services.
That's why. I'm just kidding. No, that's fine with me. Services is fine. I mean, I think it implies that something
YCS.
happens in there. Service. Okay, though, is that a question?
No, I asked you to call.
Oh, you asked for the question. Okay, well, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye. There you go.
Okay, and I hate to belabor it, just want to make sure.
Administration services.
Thank you.
Building. Just kidding. All right, let's move on, because I know, I told you this was going to happen. That's why I didn't want to get into it.
Add support at the end and then just.
We didn't need
use
to
the
sleep on that.
abbreviation.
No, that's
All
a
right.
good one.
Okay.
Come get a cookie.
Full legal description of property. We're moving into the planning and zoning agenda. We have 10 minutes to get it done.
Notice how fast
So,
they're running out the
Full legal
door.
description of property sites for over zoning cases are available for public review. This is a regular public hearing. Staff will make a full what does that mean, a full presentation? Okay, a full presentation is the following items, followed by a separate discussion, public hearing, and action by the Board of Supervisors. There's one item, and it's Development Services, Planning and Zoning Division, public hearing, rezoning case number 2217. Vianey Vega, agent for Francisco Aguayo and Ramon Ortega, requests the rezoning of parcel 10 gross acres in size from rural area 10 acre minimum, to rural area 5 acre minimum, located in the northwest corner of Avenue 1E and the alignment of County 15.5 Street, Yuma, Arizona, located in the 70 to 75 developed noise zone, which is probably why it's like this. Okay, so Rubio?
Mr. Reyes, Chairman Reyes.
Oh, go, start the
Juan Leon
process.
Rubio, Senior Planner with Planning and Zoning Division. The only reason that this is here is because there was one person in opposition. This is rezoning case 2217 as a full hearing. This request is to rezone a parcel 10 gross acres in size from RA10 to RA5. The property is located in the Yuma Mesa Planning Area at the northeast corner of Avenue 1E and the alignment of County 15.25 Street. The intent is to split the property into two parcels of 5 acres each for residential development and agricultural use. This is the property currently vacant in ag. Everything surrounding the property is zoned RA10. Parcel 1 to the south and parcel 746-45002 contain a single-family residence. All others are just in ag. The entire property, as you mentioned, is in the 70 decibel noise zone.
Yeah, that's,
Okay, yeah, that's one. Well, what it does is it requires that your building be noise attenuated. It requires certain things with the construction, from what I heard, or at least obligation, an easement telling people that this is going to be a problem and they need to understand that from the beginning because they're going to be probably in the path.
Chairman, as far as conditions, I'll list
You
the
go to
conditions
it.
at the end of the presentation. This is the site plan that was submitted by the applicant that shows the intent to split the property into two 5 acre parcels in size. This is the aerial imagery that shows the single family residence to the south and everything else in ag. This is looking at the property east, looking north along Avenue 1E. And we did receive one that are in opposition from an owner that lives outside the notification area within a quarter of a mile to the south. And we received comments from Yuma County, MCAS Yuma requesting an application disclosure statement to be recorded. And these are conditions that the commission recommended, that the following be recorded: an ARS 121134 waiver, infrastructure, aviation, agriculture, and a schedule for development disclosure statement. And that the schedule for development, that within 1 year of board approval, the applicant apply for a land division permit pursuant to the Yuma County zoning ordinance. And number 2, that they submit a letter from the irrigation district, making sure that there's irrigation system to properties. And that this map shows the person or property owner in opposition. As far as the conditions, in addition to what you see here, as far as the house, installation to the house, would just have to meet the minimum noise level reduction requirements. A typical construction would cover that. And that concludes my presentation.
A couple of questions, really quick. The letter of opposition, is it the one for Juan Mireles? Because that's what I have. I don't have an actual letter. I read the planning and zoning minutes, and it showed that there was no opposition, at least from the point that I read it. And then you tell me there's a letter of opposition, but the one I've got here says, I'm working on a design for accessory building structure. and
Chairman
whatnot."
Reyes, the letter that was attached is not the correct one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there was a letter in opposition, and I could provide a copy of that.
Well, it should be,
have
it should
it
be nice
set.
to know why they opposed it. I mean.
Would you like me to read it to the?
Yeah,
for the
read it.
record? Okay, so the letter in opposition was from a property owner, again, to the south, Luke Reimer, and this is what he wrote on an email to me, October 24th. Hi, Juan, I see your sign along Avenue 1E in County 15th. I live just down the road from where they want to subdivide 10 acres into 5 acres. I want to oppose it. One, it's going to bring more traffic down our road. Number two, I bought my property 9 years ago because of no neighbors and how quiet it is, which is perfect for raising my family. I'm scared that all my other neighbors are going to be subdividing their land if this one is approved.
So it's a neighbor that bought his property as a 10-acre site and wanted to have peace and quiet, and he thinks this is going to increase the number of people going through there. That PM10 issue, I read it in there somewhere. It's an issue that we need to be careful with. I know that Mr. Martinez, has got, I'll open it to the public as soon as we finish the conversation, listen to Mr. Martinez, and then, I just wanted to know what the opposition was. It's normally the same thing. It's always somebody that says, I moved up there to be, in the peace and quiet, and now I'm going to have 2 residences. Now, I think 5 acres is a big parcel. I once lived on a 2.5-acre parcel. I thought that was big, but 5 acres is a big parcel. 10 acres is much bigger. But unless you use it in agriculture, you have a lot of empty space that becomes dust. And so I don't know if it's being used in agriculture. That was, I guess, one of the questions I would have a little further up. Let me just open it up. Oh, Supervisor Pankratz?
Irrigation ditches, I saw in there, Mike Crowe, probably one of his last requests was to make sure that they opened up the things in the middle somewhere. I read it. Mike Crowe recommended, is that recommendation being heeded? What was his recommendation? Something about where the turnout would be.
Chairman Reyes, the condition number 2 would ensure that each property has access to irrigation water before we approve the land division permit. As far as PM10, Avenue 1E provides access to the parcel and will provide access to both parcels once the property is split.
All right. Okay, I'm going to open it up to the public, general public. Mr. Martinez, would you like to, I know you come from NCAS, but I just want to make sure.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Antonio Martinez. I'm come from Marine Corps Station, Yuma. And yes, as you can see, at this time, MCAS, although we can never say that we're in favor in residential, especially at this level of the noise zones, we do not object. And the reason we went through all the different regulations, and we mainly focus on the ARS statute that says, if there's a new residence, especially for agricultural use, that depending on the land size and depending on what we look at is the different variables. Yes, definitely this, I don't know about the quiet area, because this is pretty high noise from us. I mean, and based on the new study that we completed in 2019, it remains the same, especially right now with the F-35s.
Yeah.
But because we understand that agriculture is like the #1 economic driver for the county, and it complies with those regulations. That's the reason MCAS do not object. And we also understand that we're the second economic driver. Yeah. So I think it kind of makes sense. But kind of like on the same token, I want to make sure that I'm here and stating that we look at every case and individually, and we look at the historical data for each case. We look at the regulations that are in place at that point, and for this, I mean, it kind of like at the end, it was beyond that line. So we do request that abrogation easement. That way, they understand that it will be loud. It will be loud when those F-35s go through. And also the noise level reduction, kind of like you mentioned, we do have specific decibel requirements for that as well, just to ensure that at least while they're in the zone, inside their homes, they're sheltered from that outside noise. But I mean, we're happy that they're continuing with those agriculture uses. Hopefully, at least that's what it was presented to us, that land will continue to be used for agriculture. And honestly, that was the key variable that made this into us not objecting to it.
Well, thank you. Oh, you have a question?
I have one more question. It's not in the direct flight line. I saw that there was at the corner down here, there was a line in those, that way. Is it in the flight plan? There you go.
Yes, actually, it's not. On the right-hand side, you have a runway, and you have the accident potential zone 2 for runway 35.
Okay.
So basically, those planes just fly south.
Okay.
So they fly south, and then they fly east.
Okay, so that area isn't in
Right,
the-
and that's why it's in the.
That's why you're not a.
That's what right, and so they're not in the direct flight path.
If this plane crashes, it's not gonna.
No, it's going to be close because I'm talking about like the APC is like just on the right-hand side.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Anybody else? The applicant? No? Okay, good. You know, great while you're ahead.
Yeah.
I don't see any other questions in there. I'm going to close the public hearing and return it back to the board. I need someone to make a motion to either.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we proceed and approve
As presented by
as
the
presented.
Planning and Zoning Commission and staff. Approval. Any more discussion on this? Well, yeah, there's a second. Yeah, no, it's fine. He motioned, you second. It's fine. There's been a motion and a second. Any more questions? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And we move on to discussion regarding legislative issues, which is county administration discussion and possible action regarding state and federal legislative updates, which may include international issues, status of bills affecting Yuma County, timelines and composition of legislatures and legislative strategies and priorities, of which we had a special meeting last Friday. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, yes, we did. Members of the board, Alejandro Figueroa, Economic Development and Intergovernmental Affairs Director. We did we held the meeting at the main library last Friday. It was a roundtable legislative session with county elected officials, state legislators from districts 23 and 25, and county department heads. We discussed, or the board had the opportunity to discuss with the legislators priorities concerning broadband access for rural areas, the county's water rights, air quality, and the state's budget impact on the county. Attending from the state legislature, I can say that we had Representative Tim Dunn, we had Representative-elect Michelle Peña, we had Representative-elect Michael Carbone, and Senator-elect Brian Fernandez listen in over the phone.
What I'm doing now after the first one.
I would like to mention that the House composition changed quite a bit, as you know, and we have some of our legislators at leadership positions. We have them on the Committee on Appropriations. We have Michael Carbone and Tim Dunn. On the Committee on Government, we have Representative Tim Dunn as the chair. And then on Commerce, Representative Mike Carbone will be vice chairing that committee. On Education, we have Representative Michelle Peña. And on the Committee of Land, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs, which is very important to the county, we have vice chairing it's Representative Michelle Peña from District 23. And Michael Carbone and Mariana Sandoval are also part of that committee. Also, another very important committee for Yuma County, Natural Resources, Energy, and Water, Yuma County will be represented by Tim Dunn. And finally, Ways and Means, Michael Carbone and Mariana Sandoval will be part of that committee. I'd like to point out that while we saw high staff turnover in the Senate, State Senate, including new chief of staff, the House has retained both of its caucuses chiefs of staff. On the majority side, Michael Hunter will remain Chief of Staff. On the minority side, Tracy Lopez will remain as the Chief of Staff. The CSA held a Board of Directors meeting. Yes, sir.
Did you have anything on the Senate? Nothing?
We reported on that during the last meeting. That's why I skipped it this time.
Yeah, it's gonna be, you're gonna have a lot of work to do,
Right.
Jonathan.
So the CSA Board of Directors held a meeting last week on Thursday, and they, among other things, they adopted a couple of resolutions. Number 522, which seeks state support for local public health, and Resolution 622 seeks a long-term funding solution for the state court system that doesn't shift additional burden to the county's general funds. At the federal level, Senator Mark Kelly secured key Arizona priorities in the National Defense Authorization Act, such as funding for more F-35 and Compass Call aircraft flown at Arizona military bases, including UMA's MCAS. It also increases U.S. competitiveness through new technology and innovation. It continues the implementation of Kelly's Brandon Act to prevent military suicides and names new Department of Defense Irregular Warfare Center in honor of Senator John McCain. Among some of the funding that UMA will get, $5 million MCAS will receive $5 million to address a needed water treatment facility, and YPG will receive or has received $6.5 million for construction of a new building for the military free fall school. On the international and border affairs front, as you know, Yuma County Chairman Reyes declared an emergency in the unincorporated areas of Yuma County to address the health and humanitarian crisis in our region. City of San Luis Mayor Nieves Rydell issued a similar proclamation declaring an emergency on the humanitarian health crisis currently taking place along the U.S.-Mexico border. And also wanted to share with the board that the GSA, the U.S. General Services Administration, is currently holding a meeting at the City of San Luis, and they just announced $100 million in additional funding for the San Luis One Port of Entry remodeling and expansion project for a total of $367 million now coming to that project in our county. Also, additional funding was announced by Governor Ducey last week to in the amount of $8 million to the construction of a new port of entry in Douglas, Arizona. And that would conclude my update, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions, comments? Just one sort of comment in between a question. I mean, I know that the Mexican side, our counterparts in Mexico, have this particular take on security that we don't necessarily agree with. And I know that there's some issues between us that needs to be sort of like reconciled. But do we have any advisory from either the consulate or the State Department regarding traveling to Mexico yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
What I can share with you is that there's going to be a new Mexican consulate coming in next year, and I'm hoping to be able to build that relationship with him or her as well and work on these issues.
I don't expect the Consulate of Mexico to have any particular things. It's more the State Department here that may have some issues with people traveling to Mexico, especially the military. The advisory is still posted?
It is?
Yeah, it is.
Right. Anyway, just keep track, it's just something to keep track of. I think that there's a posting that deals with people in the military, those people that the government feels they can control a little better, so they're restricted. They should not travel. It's getting to a point that we cannot ignore it. It's like what's happening with COVID and things like that, that I think at certain points or what's happening at the border. I think we need to strengthen the relationship at the same time that we stick to, hey, it's a problem. It is a problem crossing sometimes. I think Saturday morning the lines were miles long to get into Mexico. There's got to be some sort of we've got to start looking. It's just not, how can I say this diplomatically, but it isn't just the lines to cross into Mexico. It's the attitude that prevails in both the Mexican and the American side. I think the Mexican side processes it, but it's the Army that's doing it. they're Mexican Army. They're not necessarily the most publicly inclined or, service organization that we can have. And in this particular case of our side, I think that the announcement today sort of relaxes a little bit the situation of what to do to make sure that both the staff and the public can sort of coexist peacefully, and that we can move the process forward. Just keep a close eye on that.
Will do.
All right. Any other questions, comments? If not, thank you, Alejandro. Oh, yeah, you have one?
Another question.
Sure.
Aren't the containers supposed to be gone and the fence supposed to be finished at Morales Dam?
He did give, Secretary Mayorkas did send that out, Mr. Chairman,
Mm.
and he directed them to complete it post haste. However, Border Patrol does not have an estimated time of construction to begin or completion.
So the issue of the containers is still floating around?
Yes.
We don't know, but I mean, I suppose that if there was a fence to be built, they had to be removed to be able to get to it. So that's a moving, it's something that we can talk about, but we have very little to do with it. It can't do much.
Mr. Chairman, to that point, I spoke with Senator Kelly on Friday. He called me and said that he was working with Secretary Mayorkas to complete it post haste. He understands the challenges and the needs, and said that he would do everything possible to get it taken care of.
Mhm. Well, I guess that's the best we can get right now. I think that Title 42 discussion has been had over and over again, so I don't know if we can add anything to it other than the fact that although it's an international issue or it's a national issue or it's a federal issue, as a county, we need to be prepared to act accordingly. And accordingly means to me that if it becomes a local issue, if it becomes a safety issue, if it becomes an agricultural issue, we should be ready to act. And that's about as far as we can go, I think, with this particular issue. I think it's still, I don't want to take away or make them feel like we can handle everything ourselves if need be, because I still believe they should take responsibility for what's going on. So it's very difficult to navigate that particular position, because anytime you do something to help alleviate it, you don't know whether you're actually just taking over something that you're continually saying is not your problem, it's not your fault. But we do have an obligation to protect our agriculture and to protect our citizens, so we'll keep a close eye on the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lord.
That was good timing. The air conditioner went off, the heater went off. Thanks.
It's 72.
All right, so it's, we're gonna go on to events calendar. Board members and county administrator will report on events attended or to be attended on behalf of the county, and may present a brief summary of current events, and may update the schedule for future Board of Supervisors meeting as appropriate. No legal action will be taken. This is to move us into a work session, so Supervisor Pancrase?
Most of my time was taken up with the transition team. And the transition team for the governor. Most of the meetings I attended were for those, and then CSA.
All right, Supervisor Lyons?
Met with Governor Ducey twice, Mark Kelly, Senator Kelly, and CSA, as well as a multitude of other Yuma County activities for the year, the end of the year.
Right. Okay, so we move on to Mr. Simmons?
Had attended the Welton Mohawk Irrigation Drainage District Board meeting, Welton Town Council, met with DDS reference to the Dark Sky Overlay District, looking at maybe trying to tweak that a little bit for to make it fit a little bit better. LEPC held a Tackner Water meeting to discuss the rates and the I can't think of the word I'm looking. Yeah, the assessments, which was well attended. Hopefully, we answered everybody's questions. CSA board meeting, Yuma County legislative meeting, community meeting out in the foothills. Had the honor of reading the board's proclamation at Wreaths Across America out at Sunset Vista, and about a half a dozen different Christmas programs throughout the county.
Good. Supervisor Borges is not here. He had to leave. He went to go to the hospital, at least that's what he told me. So, and myself, I just want to move the process forward a little faster, so we'll you know, it's been a busy week. I declared an emergency. I think a lot of the stuff that was done on this week, and we certainly got, you know, coverage on the audit, you know, those kind of things that just happened. And I think that repeating them doesn't do them any particular justice. We'll move on to the work session. And that is where we'll discuss and may take action on the following items. Oh, wait a minute. I do have Ian that supposedly gives a small presentation.
Thank you, Mr.
regarding
Chairman.
the-
Attended Greater Yuma Port Authority meeting in San Luis, GYDC meeting. Attended the ceremony marking the 200th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Mexico and the United States. Attended the County Managers Association meeting in Phoenix. Attended the meeting with residents in Tecna that Supervisor Simmons hosted and just mentioned. Attended Veterans Drug Court graduation, our legislative roundtable, of course, visited with Comité de Bienestar in San Luis, and volunteered at the Tamale Festival in Somerton.
Oh, fun. Was it a good turnout?
It was a good turnout.
Fantastic.
Oh, good.
I ate lots of tamales.
Oh, good. That's what I want.
I was there myself. I just didn't see a lot of you. I showed up a little later.
With a reminder.
When it was dark, dark enough. You know, we're gonna thank you very much, Ian. We're gonna move on to discussion and work session discussion action item, and the board will discuss and may take action on the following items: development service discuss current zoning enforcement activities, and if desired, provide revised direction. What do you mean? Good morning.
Craig Sellers, Director of Development Services. I have Maggie Castro with me today as well. Chairman Reyes, members of the board. It's been about 2 years since we put into effect the comprehensive permitting and enforcement policy, and we wanted to give the board an opportunity to give feedback on that process. We know that there are some of the board members that are going out and looking at different properties in their areas and reporting into us questions that they have. We wanted to see if there's any adjustment that the board would like us to do on our enforcement to where that could be minimized on their efforts. So, next slide. The zoning enforcement that we do right now is based on Arizona revised statutes and the zoning ordinance that has been adopted and updated by the Board of Supervisors. The comprehensive permitting and enforcement policy is a department policy that we put together in conjunction with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we worked on a subcommittee with them to present to the board, and the board gave us an overview okay on that. That guidance included that primarily we wanted to have violations enforced based off of complaints if possible. So that as a department, we are focusing reactively versus proactively on violations that are occurring. The types of complaints that we have received in the last 2 years primarily are junk and trash.
Mm-hmm.
Vehicles and RVs that are either inoperable or located where they should not be stored on the property. Work without permits, business activities, setbacks in height, and animal complaints. So this isn't all of the complaints we've had, but it's the most significant ones that we've received. The comments that we're receiving from the community about zoning is there's concern about deterioration in neighborhoods. So BNC Colonia, for instance.
Yes.
Second is consistency of enforcement. When we call somebody in and, for instance, having an awning located too close to the property line, they're aware that there's other awnings in a similar situation in their neighborhood and are upset because why aren't we enforcing against them as well? Well, we don't have a complaint, so we're not enforcing those. And then third, we have the property owners that this is my property. I want to use my property the way I want to use it. And that's always been the balance that we have to strike with the enforcement we do is those property rights versus the quality of life of their neighbors. And so we do strike to follow those. ASU did a study, let's see, 2016, looking at the variety of enforcement mechanisms that are available to local government. And we use a variety of these, including the code enforcement, zoning, nuisance abatement, and going to Superior Court for orders of abatement. The individuals also have the right to do eviction on property, on their leasers that are not following their contracts. And they can also cite, if it's not a tenant, trespass against people. These are things that they need to do. We don't have that right to do those. Another option that has brought to us, Town of Weldon is sending notice and then after 30 days going in and abating by their organization. We did this back in the about 2012 timeframe. The challenge with this is we have to pay up front. We have to pay for that cleanup to occur, and then we bill them for it.
You never get paid, right?
We can put a lien on the property, but it ends up, if the property goes to tax sale, the liens get washed from the property deed, and we lose the money. So we can bring forward a budget request to fund a process like this. In the past, it was approximately $100,000 that we would request in the budgets. And the last couple of years that we requested it, it was denied.
So what you do is, when you go to abatement, you go in and take everything out of the property? Is that what you do?
We would go in and in case of junk or trash, it would get cleaned up, and then we would send them a bill for that.
Do we private contract that out?
So there's a variety of different issues with that. One, state statute allows us to do it. There's some questions about what it means to issue or create an ordinance. And I believe we may have that in place with the zoning ordinance, but we still need to have that reviewed thoroughly. And then the biggest issue is the cost. Mm-hmm. And we had money funding it in the past. And from our recollection, we've only had one property that entered payment to have that come up, and we're still receiving payment for that cleanup approximately 10 years later.
Wow.
So
did we use that $100,000?
Yes.
Each year? I mean, was it?
The year that it was funded. I wasn't involved with the project, so I'm going off of memory through our discussions that we're having. So, it's that trade-off, and we can look at that more.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you go back to that one? Another thing that we can do in the case of something like a trailer park or something like that, we can create a slum property ordinance. Mm-hmm. And then if we have a RV park or a rental landlord that is not keeping their property up, we can come to the board and request that it be put into receivership and have a property management company manage their property for them for a year at a time until the situation is rectified. So that would be another avenue that we could take on some of these properties.
That sounds like, is that would be, we'd have to create what's called a slumlord ordinance, right? Okay.
And then
Who would be paying for the receivership? I mean, us or them?
funding would come from the rentals received on property.
Mm-hmm.
If that's not enough to cover the cost, I'm sure that the county would have to guarantee that what they're making.
Is it that common? Is the problem that common, slumlords, I mean, slum properties, or is it just, because, I mean, I know most of those, well, shouldn't say most of those, but a lot of those are within city limits. Is that problem common in the county, that you have like RVs and stuff? I mean, I know we have the foothills, it's not incorporated, but do we have that? Is that common? I know we have it at the BNC colonias, because it's an issue that we deal with all the time. But do we have it any other places like Orange Grove or the foothills?
Down in, off of Avenue B and C and D right there.
I guess the question I would give back is, are you feeling that there is enough of these in your areas that it would be beneficial to provide this?
Mm-hmm.
It's a tool. Like, I find no problem. I mean, adding more tools to the toolbox is not a problem. It's just that, we need to be cognizant of the fact that when we add a tool, we may have to pay for it.
Yeah, we just, I think what we've done is, several years ago, and we kind of tied developmental services and planning and zoning's hands with what they could do.
Yep.
And now we're seeing the repercussions from that with some of the residences and RV parks. And we need to revisit it and more or less untie their hands to where we can address all these issues, because I'm catching it daily from the public about homes that are in disrepair or junk RVs sitting in front of houses, and just the numerous different things.
I'm not catching it, I'm seeing it.
Oh, I'm seeing it too, but I mean, I get daily.
I check it and I call it into this, mine are all in the city, so I call it into the city. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, it's fine. I just want to get to it. The fact is that if you start enforcing your regulations yourselves, you have to have the ability to do that and the funding to do that. And I think we need to all understand that it isn't about necessarily enforcing rules. It's about having the ability to pay when the enforcement isn't available or where the person isn't there. So to me, what you're saying is, look, you put us in a situation where we cannot just go do this. We cannot go policing, because this county, there's a mix of people who don't like anything done to them, who think that their junk is treasure. And then there's another side of the equation that says it's junk. So the fact is, if we get in the middle of that and have to pay for fix the problem, then the board needs to understand that it isn't just about giving you the authority, it's giving you the funding to exercise that authority. So I caution people when they say, okay, once you turn it into a police situation where you have to police, those people who complain should file a complaint. They should be followed up. People who complain to a supervisor should complain to the Department of Development Services and file a complaint. The problem is most people don't like to piss off their neighbors. So they like to remain anonymous. And when you allow that to happen, when you allow people to remain anonymous and to simply complain to your supervisors, you're putting yourself in you're putting the department. Yeah, I didn't mean yourself, but I mean the department in a situation where they have to step into a neighborhood fight, between whatever.
I did that last week.
Well, yeah, I know.
But you also have issues too. It's like I've got a property out in the foothills that the trailer burnt down several years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a dump sitting there. The guy left and walked away and moved to Texas.
I didn't want to take that authority. I think that what happens here is the supervisor should be able to file that complaint.
Mm-hmm.
That way there's a complaint. We're not really tying your hands up. We're just making you not be a policeman throughout the county, because there's no gain in terms of public relations with you going into different places and filing citations. But supervisors who are voted in by the residents have a different approach, have a different take on it. I have no particular problem if those complaints come from the supervisors in that district.
But we also need to look at it too, whereas if we get a complaint on one house, we're complaining about that one house, but you may have 2 or 3 houses
The neighborhood?
in that same area that are as bad or just, But because we didn't get a call on those, we're just addressing this one. And I think we need to kind of let them look at a general area to address any issues that are the same as that one.
That may be a little easy for me to swallow, but again, I don't want to make the development services people, the planning and zoning people, policemen that go out and look for these things. That would be a job that I wouldn't want to take. It's not only unpopular, it's expensive. So I'm saying, okay, if we want to tweak with the way we've done it in the past, if you want to add neighborhood to it, remember, if we find a problem, if somebody complains about a problem, if the house burned, nobody takes care of it, and there's a complaint. And the complaint doesn't have to be like a formal complaint. You can call up and say, look, we got this problem, and that's a complaint. Now, that can be done by anyone. And if that neighbor isn't willing to take a step and the supervisor is willing to, that's fine with me. Now, allowing them to look at the neighborhood, it's getting into a situation like we have in the Colonias BNC. It is not going to end. Those neighborhoods are huge sometimes. I mean, look, you look at the foothills. How many people are there? 40,000, maybe 30-something?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a huge area. BNC Colonia, and it's a huge area. There's a lot of issues to be fixed in that area. Issues with public lighting. We dealt with all those problems, and I just want to make sure that we find the right balance between, giving you guys the authority and giving you the money behind it. That's why I mentioned, okay, well, we gave you $100,000 one, you used it up, you can't get it back. So look, we're going to be spending a lot of money on enforcement. If we get to a point where we let you guys to go after it, then it's going to be a situation where you guys are going to be the bad guys. Not that I want you to be the bad guys or the good guys, but I do want the board, especially those people who feel like their district, in the case of Mr. Simmons or Supervisor Pancrazi, I want you to have a tool to deal with them, but I also want them to realize the tools mean spending the money to fix the problem, and you may never get it back unless you guys come up with an enforcement process that allows you, like Welton, to charge the individual and get it back in some way that it's better than waiting until the land is sold, because sometimes the land is not going to be sold. With a lien on it does not guarantee you get paid back. A lien on it just puts another lien on the property that makes it more difficult for them to sell it, right? So if you guys can come back with a tool, like the slumlord ordinance or something like that, that allows us to be able to recoup some of the money and reuse some of the money, I'll be more than glad to open it up a little more. Other than that, looking at tweaking it, making the neighborhood type situation, I'll be willing to look at that, as long as when we do that, we also acknowledge that it may cost a little money, because when you go into a neighborhood and you find a shade that shouldn't have a permit, then you look around and you can actually see another one like that one. That means you guys get to go after the other one. It doesn't mean you really solve a problem. You just added more to the problem. Now you're dealing with the neighborhood instead of an individual. Hopefully that is, again, we have moved the needle slowly.
Isn't that what we did when we did that cleanup, when we do a cleanup in an area?
A cleanup in an area is a voluntary action that the homeowners are making to clean up on their own. We don't have a violation necessarily in place when that occurs. It's just an opportunity that we have to work with the homeowners to clean up, and we try to do things like that as well.
That worked really well in that Magnolia area.
No, and there are tools. I mean, the idea that we need to revisit the guidance is what we're dealing with here. And like I said, there are some guidance that I really particularly never really liked. One of them was that, that you could go by, look, health and safety is covered in there. If you see a pool that has no fence in it, you don't have to have a complaint. I mean, it's a health and safety issue. You can go in there. But a shade, which is the most prime example of someone that builds a shade without a permit. Once you go in a neighborhood and you cite someone for a shade structure that should have gotten a permit, and you look at another neighborhood, and then you look further and there's 3 of them in the neighborhood. Now, what does that mean? That means that now you got 4 cases in that neighborhood. You only don't have 1, you have 4. And if you go, I know, but the point that I'm trying to make is misery costs money. And fixing misery costs a lot of money, And if you guys are gonna change those rules, or if you're thinking of changing those rules, think of the cost, because if you send it over to DDS without the money to enforce it, you're just gonna make them be desperate about, or anxious about how you're gonna solve this problem. So what I'm saying is, okay, fine. I don't like the idea that you guys will be policemen and go, because this county is made up of some radical people out there who think they can do anything they want to with their property. The moment you step into a constitutional fight as far as they're concerned. I mean, we've had this happen before. So you get a complaint, say you're a supervisor, you get a complaint about a house that's burned down, nobody takes care of it, and you say, okay, you guys need to step into this one. I have no problem with that, as long as we understand that to clean up a burned house for someone is going to cost money, and that we're willing to, as supervisors, all of us, meet and say, okay, we're going to assign this much in this budget to do that. And we let the residents of Yuma County know we're going to be spending money on this. I have no problem with that. I do have a problem with you guys turning into cops, because that makes you look, what it does though, is people, instead of coming to you for permits, they will not. They will refuse to because they got some issue in the back there that they don't want you to see.
They're not,
I agree, Mr. Chairman.
not so much cops as if the fact that a lot of the issues we get is trash, junk cars, stuff like that on a yard. And if that's what they're looking at, they look at the surrounding area to see if there's others like it. They're not looking for awnings that aren't permitted or whatever. It's just the basic trash.
It's a violation.
Well,
Can't decide that.
Orders, yes.
some of
Orders, you
the,
hold that.
I tell you, even this gets a little touchy.
and
But
I
look-
can understand. And, you know, we're not trying to become police. What we're trying to do is balance that. I get a complaint for a specific item, and we can stand in front of the person's house and see the same violation or similar. We just want to have that reasonableness of, we're not just picking on this guy because there's a complaint. We're seeing the characteristic of the neighborhood and seeing, okay, if this person believes that this shouldn't be allowed in this yard, it shouldn't be allowed in the two adjoining yards either. And our impact of that has been a reduction in calls, because if all they're trying to do is call to get their neighbor in trouble, they're not going to call if it's going to get
Well, they will
themselves
call.
in trouble as well.
They call it because they're pissed.
Right.
And so they'll call anyway, just to make the neighbor go through the problem. I think that's like moving the needle a little, right? Not the whole totally. And you guys should also, when you request that, you should also acknowledge the fact that it may cost you a lot of money to fix a neighborhood as opposed to try to get one person to agree. I mean, you get one person, you hope that's a message to everybody else. Hey, you know, this guy, you can do it. So this guy, the guy that's cited, can complain about his neighbor, but it's a complaint driven. You know, hey, you're doing it to me, do it to the neighbor kind of thing. But if you need to make the decision and you get into a neighborhood that's 30,000 people, 20,000 people, and you see something that is not right, and the neighbor does it too, and the other does it too, where does that place you? That places you in a situation where you don't have no decision-making process. You're just simply forced to deal with the neighborhood. Now, right now, you're forced to deal with an individual that somebody complains about. If you're asking for me, I wouldn't change that. I wouldn't change the complaint-driven process. But if you want to expand it so you guys can handle neighborhoods, it's fine with me too, just as long as we as a board understand that that may mean adding a lot to your budget, because you're going to give us a report every year how many issues that you found yourselves, and you're going to have to come to us and say, well, we're going to have to clean this area as opposed to this house area, and you're not getting paid for cleaning houses, individual parcels. What makes you believe you're going to get paid for cleaning in neighborhoods? I mean, it's just not the way. Look, the hell is paid with good intentions. This is one of those. I think that we're trying to react to people's desires to get it cleaned up.
You also have to look at the percentage of, like they've explained to me. If you address the issue, there's probably 95% that are going to fix the problem. Yes, you're going to get that percentage, that small percentage that's going to say, the heck with you, I'm not touching it, you're stuck with it.
Get to court.
And I'm here to understand the direction you would like us to go in. And, you know, as you can see from the discussion today, there's some
Division?
variation in what that is. And so we wanted to have that opportunity for you to discuss it openly with us and to provide
Thank
us
you
with
very
that
much.
discussion.
Thank you very much. It's what we needed to end up. You're between lunch and us. You know that, right? No, look, guys, I think that you quantify it for me. Try to get an idea what it will cost, and you bring it back to me and say, we're gonna need, $500,000 every year, or 100,000 every year, 50,000. Try to quantify it, because that's pretty nebulous to say that, you have this problem and the neighbors complain, you don't fix it because nobody, if the neighbors complain, they should complain, and we should be able to get in there and fix it. But if your report began by telling us we can't recoup the money, and we're asking you to expand that, I mean, we need to acknowledge the fact that if you can't recoup the money now on individual parcels, it is going to be increasingly difficult to recoup it on a neighborhood matter, especially given situations like the BNC Colonia or the outlying areas where this happens relatively a lot. We did the complaint-driven process because we felt that, one, people didn't need to feel like they were being looked at by the county, and two, because it was very expensive to enforce it when you guys were looking at every violation that you could see by going by the houses. We thought that was a lot of pain and trouble, and so that's back there when we made the decision. We have changed the philosophy of the new board members. Was more like get it done. People are complaining that, so you change the complaint process, you squeezed it down to a few months, which I think is great, because people don't have to wait a year and a half to get their case
To see
resolved.
anything,
But now
yes.
you're trying to expand the number of cases. And that to me needs to be thought out before, because it's like the butane thing. Remember when the legislature did that, gave him a tax break, and then he became like a $250 million boondoggle. That's
Yes.
what this seems a little to me like when we tell you, okay, well, expand it to the neighborhood. Well, what does a neighborhood mean? I mean, do we have an actual physical description of what a neighborhood means? Because BNC neighborhood is much different than the neighborhood in the Orange Grove, or the neighborhood in Foothills, or the neighborhood in Welton. It is a very different size neighborhood. Those are the things that, okay, Maggie, you're next.
Support's on the way.
Yeah, support's on the way. And Mr. Chairman. I know, man, I'm trying. I know.
What?
Get him to move.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, one of the processes that was in place in the past was that when staff received a complaint, staff would look at the property that was where the complaint was placed, and then staff would also look at the adjacent properties and then the properties across the street. If there were violations on the adjacent properties and properties across the street, then staff would initialize cases on those properties as well. So that's another option, not just going after the entire neighborhood, but maybe the immediate.
So if you're gonna limit it to the immediate area and you're going to say within 300 feet, within 600 feet, I could go with that. I just don't want, a process that involves a neighborhood is a very difficult process, because how people describe their neighborhood, like people in Welton or people in Roll describe their neighborhood in a much broader.
Well, and that's what I was saying. You've got one house that's, it's in violation. The house next door may be just as bad, but because we didn't get a call on that, we're just ignoring it.
Give me
Check that, the
give me a
300
boundary,
foot.
so many feet, 1,000 feet, 300 feet, 500 feet, within that parameter.
Mr. Chairman, in the past, it was adjoining property owners.
Any property owners?
Yeah.
I can deal with
Or
that.
across the street, the
Right.
property owners
Just
across the street.
so we wouldn't change much, you don't go, but you can always take a look at the surrounding area, adjacent property owners, and see if that violation is basically neighborhood-wide or area-wide.
Somebody's come in and sold everybody the same thing, yes.
Okay, don't want you to step aside and then find something in the neighborhood of BNC Colonia, because you're gonna find a lot of that stuff. I need them to, we need to keep working with them on a voluntary basis as much as we can. And if we can't, address the issues like this, how can you give me a ticket if next to me there's somebody else, or a violation? I wouldn't call it a ticket.
And
but a
Mr.
violation.
Chairman, to address the issue of manufactured home parks or mobile home parks, recreational vehicle parks, the Landlord-Tenant Act is in place. The property owners or tenants who rent properties in recreational vehicle parks or manufactured home parks do have that avenue if they know that the property isn't being maintained, or if a specific structure that they're renting is not up to code, they can file a complaint with the state under the Landlord-Tenant Act.
Right. Let me just sum it up because we're going to spend a lot of time in here. You're asking for, recommend this guidance. You're asking for the ability to develop a slum property ordinance identified in the appeal process. You're asking for be able to check neighborhood parcels for violations when public or staff complaints are received, right? The rest of it, you don't have a problem with continuing. You notify the board before taking action, whatever, address high impact, but all those. Allow public to submit anonymous complaints. I don't like that, but I guess it could be.
That's a safety issue.
Yeah.
We do have some individuals who have told us over the phone that
That was going to kill them if they found out that filed a complaint. I got it. So is that a way we can? Is that what we can direct staff to do? I mean, it would change a couple of things, but it wouldn't change that much. And I would say that we review and analyze every year, to see how that work out in terms of the actual cost, and not in terms of the policy. I think the policy is good. I mean, the policy of checking adjacent property may be better than ignoring them. It is better than ignoring them. It just may be a very costly situation. So I'd like to know that before we proceed and change it permanently. Okay?
Thank you very much. And that's all we need.
Is that okay?
No, I'm good. Like I said, we need to open up a little bit because it ties their hands, and also it makes us look bad. People come to us want to know, well, the property next door is just as bad. Why didn't you do anything with it?
Well, that's
so you know what? That's what I'm saying though. Next door,
I know what you're
Jason.
saying. I know what you're saying. I've gone through it.
Yeah.
I've gone through it. I've personally gone through it when people complain, wait, I can see the other guy has got that big shade on it. Why am I getting this? And I'm going like, oh my God. Take some pictures, okay, and send them to me.
There's some places you can
and then,
work your way
you're
down
going to
the
get
street.
that. It's what they pay us, the big bucks, man. So anyway, you've got your direction. You've got those minor changes that you can live with. And again, just keep us abreast. If you feel like it's too much or too little, not too little. If it's too little, it's fine. But if it's too much, let us know ahead of time, okay?
Thank you
Is that
very
okay
much.
with you guys?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. That is a work session. And I think I can move on to...
Merry
I think that's
Christmas.
done. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you, I think it's January the 4th.
Yep.
Because we don't, I think Monday is a legal holiday, so we move it to Wednesday. So we'll see you at the 4th, okay? Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your patience this year. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.